This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are back here live in the studio. It's actually great. 2 weeks in a row I get to be in the studio. So, as usual, we are also live on Facebook, so you can hop on over there, watch the live stream, and ask your questions, and we'll answer those questions either through the show, if they make sense, or we will do those during the commercial break. So, today we do have a special guest in the show today. So, Sachin is here, comes with a background of what I would call a best classification, and I'll let him introduce himself here in a second, about really social entrepreneurship, social innovation, social impact, more than just the normal, starting a business kind of a thing. Lots of experiences, involved in a lot of different things. I mean, he's got a lot of things on his resume, but we're going to go ahead and let's introduce Sachin. Sachin, thank you very much. I know it's like a weird time for you in the time zone you're in because you had this last-minute trip to Mumbai. So I thank you for getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning your time to join us here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm glad I managed to find a blue sweater because I thought it was all audio.
Actually, you're not the first guest that this sometimes has happened because if you read through all the emails that the associate producer sends, there's a little bit of information about it, but we don't overly emphasize it, but we do a live stream. And we've had some very weird backgrounds when the guests connect in using Zoom. We had one where you could see the washer and dryer behind them in the basement. And so from your background, you got some nice curtains there. I think you must have run around and moved into a different room of the house there a little bit.
No, so I'm in our hotel room, so luckily it's all dark and quiet.
So, Sachin, why don't you start off first? Give us a little bit of background about you, in kind of where you grew up, and then how'd you kind of get into what it is you're doing now?
So, as my accent probably gives away, I'm a Brit. So I was born and brought up in North London. Huge tennis fan when I was a kid. Never really interested in technology. When I was about 14, I blew up my mom's computer, and she said, "Fix it or else." And your Indian parents have a stereotype of being exceedingly strict, and she was no exception. And so, I started reading about DOS, and it takes how far back it was. And, after a week of reading, and I was very good at math, I got it to work. So I think that kind of kicked in the bug. The next year, I built my PC. For my birthday after lots of convincing, and it was like £1,000 cheaper than buying it, from HP or something at that point. And so then my best friend and I started building PCs for our friends and family. We did 20 PCs, then 50 the next year, then 100, then 500. And this was all when we were in school. And our first customer was my design teacher. Which was, I tell you what we did. It was just so cheeky. His laptop wouldn't work, and we basically rang up the manufacturer, got him a new power cable, which fixed the laptop, and we made £100. And £100 14
now,
is a lot
hold
of
on.
money.
Does he know that?
No.
Now he does.
This is an exclusive.
Exclusive reveal here on the Killer Innovation Show.
And then, I got into software. Obviously, I studied computer science. And over when I was about 17, I still had this PC business. And I wanted to take a year up before college, explain to my mom, that I don't want to go to college straight away. She'd heard all the Silicon Valley horror stories, and what she called horror stories. She said, "Nothing doing. Are you going to go run your own company because you're never going to go to school, and nothing is more important than education." And so I ended up at Deutsche Bank at 17. I was the youngest employee and built a lot of the robots that traded foreign exchange. So I built the first you would call it today an AI, but it's not really an AI. But the first thing that could read numbers off a screen, we hotwired a keyboard, and we executed foreign exchange trades.
So this was basically automating the trades, right? So kind of pre-canned, when you're playing the arbitrage gap kind of thing.
That's it. Yeah. Currency arbitrage.
Right.
But it was all done manually, right? So we were doing it at 100 milliseconds. Traders were taking 2-3 seconds. And so we were just wicked fast, which is awesome. And I saw that entire evolution, from the front seat as, effectively a child who'd been given keys to the kingdom. And it was amazing because it was just such a surreal experience, building out the API eventually, because it was very quick. Somebody found out what we were doing. They came in and said, hey, you guys can't do this. And we're like, well, it doesn't say robots can't trade. And after some negotiation, it's like, it probably makes more sense that we just open an API for you guys rather than you have this rig of a circuit reading numbers. And
So what were you just doing? Were you basically doing screen scraping? Is it off of
we were screen scraping, but we were screen scraping off of video recording.
Off of a video recording.
Right, and the video recorder connected to a field programmable gate array, so FPGA circuits, because they could do parallel processing. So we could, and then we would hotwire a keyboard.
I could just imagine Deutsche Bank CIO like hair on fire.
It was the good old days of finance. This is like the 2000s, early 2000s. So then I ended up staying in the bank for another 6 years. And I studied side by side at Imperial College. So I studied engineering, Mandarin, and finance. Then in 2004, I kind of woke up 4 a.m. and I said to my best friend from college, and I said, hey, I've got this idea. I don't think we're going to have servers anymore. I think that's just not going to happen. And I think we're going to keep all our data in data centers. And it was this really long out, just weird dream I had about it was odd that I had this dream, but it was just a weird dream to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and saying, it's like a eureka moment. We're not going to have computers in 10 years. And he basically said, Sachin, go back to sleep, put the phone down. And I was on sabbatical from the bank as well, because it was like my penultimate year in college. So they'd given me 6 months off and some money to go think of something to do. And so then I went back to Saurabh and I said, no, I slept on it. It still hasn't gone. And then we started building Niveo. And we were the first people in the cloud in 2004. As I graduated, that became my full-time occupation. The PC business had become a software company. The software company, I kind of spoke to my mom and said, so look, this makes cash. I don't really know what to do with it, but my heart's not in it right now. So I'm going to park it with you. You've run a business before. This will keep you entertained.
So hold it. You gave your PC business to your mom.
Well, I made the PC business to a software company, and then I gave it to my mom, and I said, I think you should run this. It did a couple of $1 million a year. It wasn't phenomenal amounts of revenue, but it kind of. I said, no, I'm going to do this thing called the cloud, and no one understood us. I mean, it was just the most ridiculously difficult thing I've ever had to do. Because it was like trying to sell waterproof paint to people who didn't live in houses and it didn't rain. They're in the desert. And you're trying to explain to them, it's going to rain eventually and you're going to need a house eventually because tents aren't going to kick it. And that was really our first 4 years. First 4 years, we did nothing. We're trying to convince Microsoft and Adobe and everyone else that you must rent software. So everything you see today about Creative Cloud, Microsoft renting Office 365, that's all our work. And it was just super hard work, but we were so young, 22 or something. And so we were petulant. Like, you just couldn't say no to us. If you said no, we'll say, okay, can we try this country, or can we try this demographic, or can we just focus on this? And I remember, we started off by saying we want to have worldwide domination, and then eventually we got India pricing for Office. But as long as we got one glimmer of hope, that was enough to get started with.
So let me just inject here. So the fact that you were young, had never tried anything like this before, never at the scale you're trying to operate. So would you say that being naive was actually an advantage in this case?
Oh yeah, I mean, always, that saying, always be hustling.
Yep.
I mean, we were always being hustling. I mean, if you just asked me what I was doing at that point, that was it. You were in for a half an hour lecture about how the world was going to change and everything was going to move to data centers, and ultimately we built the first. We used to stream Windows in the cloud, in the browser, so on any screen you could access a Windows desktop and an app store.
That's great. We're gonna take a quick commercial break here, so don't go anywhere. We're gonna be right back with continuing the conversation with Sachin and get a little bit more about starting off and actually, totally disrupting a whole bunch of industries in the process. So don't go anywhere. We're gonna be right back, and then this conversation, we've got some announcements coming up at the end of the show, so you're also not gonna want to miss those. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio. This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are in the studio this week, but before we jump back into the segment, I want to just take a quick moment just to thank our sponsor. One of the sponsors for today's show is Zoom. We use Zoom to bring in all of our guests, to allow them to collaborate and become part of the studio here. Zoom, I've been using Zoom for over a year. As you know, you've heard me before. We don't take on sponsorships from companies or products that we don't already use long before the sponsorship discussions even began. So if you haven't tried it out, check it out. Quality is phenomenal. Works all over the world. Unbelievable audio and video quality. You won't regret it. Hop on over to killinnovations.com/Zoom. You get your free account that allows you to collaborate with up to 50 people, 50 people. So that's a free account. Zoom's making that available. Check it out, killinnovations.com/Zoom. So, Sachin, let's pick up where we left off. So you take your PC company, turn it into a software company, give it to your mom to run, right? And then you go off and you're going to go swing at windmills by launching this thing called cloud computing.
Yes, that's a very good summary. Actually, I wish I did it that eloquently. And so for the next 10 years, we're building this. We sold eventually after getting people to understand. Then it was really quick. We launched the $50 set-top box, the $75 laptop. We turned old PCs into new PCs by using the power of the cloud. And we just got to an inflection point. And then we sold the company in 2012 after just launching with partners like Amazon, which is now their desktop as a service product. So it was great. It was like the Wild West, and we sold the company for $100 million to the lead investors. But there was lots of learning lessons in that. So after that, we Saurabh and I kind of sat and said, what are we going to do? And I think the biggest thing we want to do is whatever it is we do next, we're not going to raise money early. We're going to first make sure we've got something that scales and makes money, and then we can have a couple of things that are moonshots, and we can raise money there, but that our livelihood, bread, butter, big play is not going to be focused on that. And that's kind of brought us to present day. So that was 2012 when we started. So actually it's quite funny. We went back to my mother. So that software company we gave you, we want it back.
So you were an Indian giver. I'm going to give it to you, and now I want it back.
Yeah, exactly. And it was quite funny, but because we needed a base to be able to platform from, and my mom had done a great job of keeping it running and kind of tinkering with it, and it was like the perfect platform for us to kind of launch next from.
So I'm trying to imagine that conversation. So, Mom, that thing you've been running, I want it back. Doing a great job here, but so you take this back, and then now, what did you do with it? What's the next set of things that you've been involved in now?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we did at Navio, which was pretty awesome, is that we gave a percentage of the company's stock to charities or for not-for-profits, and that was like a central part of our belief that businesses can make money for all the stakeholders, but they have to have social impact. So even as a company, and we tried it, but because we were so much venture funded, we couldn't always do everything we wanted. We worked with Her Majesty Queen Rania in Jordanian schools and kind of help schools build technology. But we also just gave stock. And so people like Keep a Child Alive, which is Alicia Keys' charity, got money when we sold, and that was fantastic. Virgin Unite, which was also excellent. So we went away and said, hey, we think outsourcing is really broken. If you had an idea and you want it to get built, or you're running on the cloud, the likelihood is that from what we see now, less than 15% of our customers have an optimized environment on the cloud. Most of them are spending too much, not knowing how to do it, switching on the wrong things, not committing properly. And from our own experience, we'd seen, the last 2 decades prior, the audience, the person who did outsourcing had changed. It went from the bank CIO to the .com CEO to the app CEO, and now eventually by 2020 to Joe Blog, anyone with an idea CEO. Mm-hmm. Because technology was now just a part of everything, every business was a tech company. From taxi to insurance to ordering bananas, it was all tech. And so you had more ideas, but less people that knew how to actually implement. We did this analysis that from coffee table conversation to say a live app was like a 1.5%, 2% conversion. And so everything we're doing now is about how do we make that 25%, and how do we use AI to automate as much of the software building, cloud outsourcing process. And so we're Amazon's largest partner in Asia. We contribute in India to about 4% of their revenue for AWS. But we also now have a part of our business that uses AI to build software. And so we can build it 60% faster at twice the speed of our nearest competitor. But it solves 3 key problems. One, it's transparent pricing. So it's not about, I think it's going to cost this, and then I hit you with a change request. We go online, so it's guaranteed. The second is, if it costs more, it's our problem. If it costs less, you get the saving. And the third is how we do the process. So we think software is 60% components, 40% design and business logic. The 40% design and business logic, we have this deep learning partnership with vendors around the world, because so many dev shops around the world have engineers, and we just tap into those. But 60% is fully automatic. It's done by our system, and it's super sexy. It's software writing software.
So so in this case, you're actually you've kind of taken, I'm going to hypothesize here, you've taken what you did back at Deutsche Bank, where you were kind of automating and arbitraging, currencies, but now you're kind of arbitraging resources. Try to hide what's happening behind the scenes in order to try to make
what we did in the cloud.
Do it as much as possible, just to hide the complexity, right? Because even today, when you think about cloud services, it's not easy if you don't have the right team.
Or building software, right? So our dream is to be everybody's personal engineering team.
Right.
And we are to taxi, what Uber is to taxis, we are to outsourcing.
Right.
You deal with one brand. Right. They deal with the build and the operate. And the fact that most of our engineers are not ours, and we have 200-something thousand engineers that work for other companies, but they are our engineering team, means we're building the world's largest consulting company without any engineers, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, well, we could have a whole conversation around the whole threat of AI and the replacement of jobs, which is a whole different discussion. We got to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come right back. We're going to continue on this discussion. I'm going to ask Sachin to think about kind of those 2 or 3 recommendations you would give to an entrepreneur that you wish you had gotten, 15 years ago. And also, I want to talk a little bit more about the equity to charity model.
Got it.
So we'll talk more about that when we come back. So when we come back, we're going to pick up the conversation with Sachin. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we jump back into this segment, another shout out to one of our brand new sponsors, which is HP. Now, you're all going to be shaking your head going, oh my God, you're biased. You know, you're the former CTO from HP. I left HP 5 years ago, but they have been a supporter for my nonprofits for many, many, many years, back going over a decade, and they wanted to partner with us in support of the show, which in turn then supports the nonprofits, so supporting of hackingautism.org and Pioneer Education Africa. So I thank HP for that support. You'll hear more about their sponsorship coming up and what they're doing and what we're doing with them and some of the great work that we'll be doing together. So stay tuned. But I just want to give a shout out and a big thank you to HP for the support they give us. So Sachin, we went off to commercial break, and first thing I want to tee up though really quickly is your work on the charity side, which you and I had a conversation during the commercial break about what we do here in the case of the Killer Innovation Show. With any money we get in, author royalties and all that, we push it off to hackingautism.org or the Pioneer Education charities, and my listeners have known about this for quite some time, but I'm really excited about what some of the things you're doing. So why don't you share just real quickly what you're doing?
Things, obviously one of the things that we can now do with our platform is rapidly build technology, and whether it's on the operational side or building. And so we started a program last year called Life, which is about we give 50,000 hours of engineering free or at like heavily reduced price to not-for-profits. So we've worked on the U.S. death penalty and the death penalty worldwide to remove it. We've worked on Children's Creativity Museum in San Francisco. We work with Syrian kids who've had their hands blown off and using technology to 3D print a hand. And we think this is a great way for our teams to work on things that make the world a better place. And then the second is we give 15% of all our companies to the charities we are most closely associated with, including our own foundation. And a lot of it is centered around children and education, heavily children, and then majorly education.
So in this case, you say 15%, you give them actually the shares in that company. So if there's a cash out or liquidity event, then that cash.
When the company starts.
That's phenomenal. I gotta pick up on that idea, because that's another way to better sustain.
And we've seen it pay dividends. That's the thing. When we did Nivea and we didn't give 15%, we paid $1 million plus to people. And it was amazing because it helped them do programs that they hadn't even factored in. It's that surprise of a eureka moment as well.
Yep. That's great. And I want to encourage, listeners, if you're in financial means, you've got your business, think about this as just a way, not to just write the check and feel good, but to actually get engaged with charities that you're just passionate about. Find something you're passionate about and just, engage, lean in. So Sachin, before we have to close out here on the show, I want to give you a chance to just share kind of one or two key pieces of advice you've learned all the way from the time you were 14 and you destroyed your mom's PC all the way through to now. What would be the one piece of advice you would give a young entrepreneur who is coming to you and asking for a conversation?
So I'm going to give you 4 really quick ones. So I think what we've learned from this business is bootstrapping is essential. We've built a 60 million aggregate revenue business with no outside money. And that just gives you so much power and positioning. Yep. Because you control your destiny and you're profitable and so on and so forth. Second is never, ever give up. There will always be naysayers. And one thing that I always say is genius is doing what people think is different. Crazy is also doing what people think is different. And people often call you crazy, but that's the good signs of proving that you're a genius. I think be very, very careful where you raise money from and when you raise it and at what terms, especially as a first-time founder. and work really hard to hire the right people. And remember that people are not a SaaS team. It's not about switching on and off. They're not resources or bolts. We call it human capital because it's the most important form of capital there is.
So in this case, I think you're the one point that's kind of common from all the guests that have been on the show is around this perseverance.
Yes.
Kind of stick it to itness. You're going to have the people that are going to call you nuts. And actually, I'm trying to remember which guest it was. Maybe it was Jeffrey Moore. One of the guests in the last couple of years. Made the point is that the volume of the people used in calling you crazy, the stronger your idea probably is. So, don't let the naysayers, or what we refer to on this show as the corporate antibodies, if you're inside of an organization, or the innovation antibodies, the people from the outside saying, oh, that'll never work, don't try it.
Well, my general approach is the minute someone says something can't be done, it's my solemn duty to prove them wrong.
So you take it almost as a challenge. I'm going to challenge you. You're going to go out and prove this.
That's the most important thing because that gives you a source of energy that money cannot buy.
Right. Exactly. So, what's next for you? What are you working on now? What does the next couple of years look like for you?
So we're building out Engineer.ai and CloudOps.ai. As I said, we're Amazon's largest partner in Asia, one of the fastest growing in the world. We're now going to raise some money finally, but it's nice to raise it when you have a decent chunk of revenue.
I'm guessing you're going to get a little better terms this time around.
Yes. And I think for us, it's very heavily centered on this idea that we want to make it easy for people to come up with an idea that's technology based, execute it, operate it, and not have to worry about how the stuff comes together.
Right.
And then one of the things that we've done up till now, at least, is we use all our profit and invest it. So we've got 35 investments, including some of our own ideas. So we have a photo app called Shodo, using machine learning to help people bring photos together from personal and public events. We have a health startup, which is now India's fastest growing site for millennial health, which is health meets marketplace. We're working with first-time founders as well and saying, hey, look, I've seen this movie before. Here's what I would do, wouldn't do. So both advice and capital. But
so in this case, Sachin, you're taking your profits and then you're actually creating separate companies that you're making investments in. So this is how you're kind of, extending the reach of the ideas that your team is generating rather than just trying to keep it captured, but you're literally standing up separate companies.
Setting up separate companies, but also investing in other companies.
Right.
If we think something we can help with or we understand, we've invested from deep AI, deep cloud, right the way through to medical analytics, and it's where we think we can create a bridge, especially between the East-West bridge. Mm-hmm. Being based in San Francisco and London, one of the things that and understanding Asia so well. At least the Southeast Asian part, means that we have a really unique understanding of two very different markets, one of center of innovation and one the center of consumption. And that really helps us build that bridge.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because a lot of companies, even companies, you're going out and raising a first round, but you've got real revenue, tend to kind of don't do anything outside other than just that narrow focus versus you're saying, if we find something that's interesting where you can contribute either expertise, capital development, or clients who are doing really interesting work or things your own staff. So you've got a lot of things going on. How do you keep the distraction from not becoming a problem?
So when we write a check, that's it. I mean, it's advice. It's like whether you're a friend or an investor or a portfolio company, it's advice you're asking. Right. And this connection. And I think, one thing I learned in San Francisco really early is there's a very strong pay forward architecture culture. And, whether that you ask for advice, whether we invest, we advise a lot of companies, even when we pass on the investment, because we think we can help guide the founders. Mm-hmm. But my focus is how do we take 60 million in aggregate revenue, so we did about 25 million last year, and how do we make that 250 million revenue within 5 years?
Right.
And so that's our path. That's our trajectory right now. And literally my obsession is now how do we make sure we hit that trajectory? Because at 250 million in revenue, we can kind of do what the hell we want.
Yeah, you're definitely in control of your own destiny.
Yes.
Which, trust me, having done 12 startups before I got my number 13, where I got my IPO and I grew that to $3 billion, cashed out, then I could go work. Then I can go work for HP, and it didn't matter because I wasn't there for the paycheck.
Exactly. You do it for the fun of it, right? You do it because you enjoy it.
Right, same thing here. Well, I've been doing the show for 13 years. It's not like I'm making money on this thing. So I love it. I love meeting people like you. I love, helping the listeners. So really quick, we got to wrap up here. How do people follow what you're up to? What are some of your coordinates?
At Sachin Duggal is my Twitter.
Okay.
At Squared SD is the company's one.
Okay.
Best is to get me on Twitter, and then if I can help, I'll send you my email address.
Perfect.
I tend not to my email address, otherwise it'll get swamped.
Oh, I believe me, I know that. But we'll put the coordinates up on the show notes so that you can at least keep track of what Sachin's up to, and you can talk to him. So Sachin, I again appreciate you. I know it's coming up on 3:00 in the morning there, and I do appreciate you taking the time. We're gonna be right back. Don't go anywhere. Right after this commercial break.
Biz Talk Radio. This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back. Hey, I wanted to give you a quick update. As many of you know, if you've been following me on on the Facebook page or over on Twitter, that I took a month off and did what I called this innovation tour. And the purpose of this innovation tour is really about, me getting a break from just my day-to-day job. You need to recharge yourself. But it was also about, getting out there and learning, trying unique and different things. Now, I'm not going to spend the rest of this segment giving you a complete rundown on the innovation tour. I'm going to collect that up. We'll make a show about it. I mean, I got to spend one day with a bonsai master, just kind of learning, getting a different perspective on risk-taking. Think about it. If you're doing a bonsai and you're snipping a branch or bending the tree to take on a certain form, you're making a decision that you will not know whether it's right or wrong for a decade. So it's a whole different kind of risk management. And there's a bunch of other experiences that I had that I set up through the entire time. One of the areas that I went to was Auckland, New Zealand. I was there to teach the 7 Laws of Innovation workshop, taught it twice to 2 different groups. They were each one-day workshops, about a couple hundred people each, sponsored by Callahan, which is the New Zealand government. While there, I recorded a show with a founder of a company there. Her name is Carrie McMaster. She's the co-founder of Performance Lab, which is a company that's really around the sports health kind of category. And it makes sense given that Carrie is the 2-time world champion in karate, 2 years in a row, which is extremely rare operating at that level on the global scale. World champion twice, 2 years in a row. I didn't find it out until the end of the interview. You'll listen to the interview next week, which is a good thing I didn't tick her off and she kicked my butt early in the interview. But what she's really focusing on is artificial intelligence, big data, really applied to the technologies that she works with, which is typically sports medicine, sensors like Fitbit watches like I'm wearing here, the ability to collect up a massive amount of data and then drive these analytics and create very personalized kinds of programs and activities. And it's also part of this discussion was to give some background on entrepreneurialism in New Zealand and what the environment in New Zealand is all about. So you're not going to want to miss it. Trust me. That's next week's show. I will not be live in the studio. You'll hear my interview with Carrie McMaster next Sunday. So don't miss it. You can listen to it live here on the radio, or you can subscribe to the podcast. And if you're not a subscriber to the podcast, you should head on over. whether it's iTunes or Google Play or Android or whatever tool you're using to capture your podcasts, go check those out. You can just search for either Phil McKinney or Killer Innovations, and the show will come up. You can subscribe, and that way you make sure that you're not missing a single show. So again, next week's show, some great insights, some very unique perspectives about entrepreneurialism, innovation around the world. So you're not going to want to miss that. That is Kerry McMaster, co-founder of Performance Labs, right here on Killer Innovations next week. Now, last week we talked about this a little bit. These are talking about the Killer Question Card Deck. They are now available. You can go over and get them over at innovation.tools. Some of you have sent me some emails about them. We're not really running advertising. We're starting a little bit this week. You'll start seeing it pop up on Facebook. We want to give you, the listeners to the show, and those of you, either the podcast or live on radio, to get first shot before the advertisement starts. So you got to get on this. We don't have a whole lot of them. We didn't go out and print, thousands and thousands and thousands of these. We just did a small run, just to see what the reaction was going to be. They're selling incredibly well. So we may or may not do some additional print runs on them. It was never my vision to go off and create this as a long-term product, but we have had so many requests for the cards, and we got them designed, and they're beautiful. People are loving them. We're getting some great feedback on them. But if you're listening to this right after we did the show, so the first week of May 2017, you're going to want to get over to innovation.tools and check them out. If you're listening to the show after that, go on over, see if they're available still, or see maybe if we do turn this into a full long-term product. But we want to make sure that the loyal fans, you, get first shot at getting access to the cards. They're shipping them all over the world, so you don't have to worry about, can I get them, wherever you live. And actually, we lose a little bit of money on the internationals. I think we're charging $10 extra for shipping, but it costs much, much more than that just to mail them. But I want to get these into your hands, particularly longtime listeners, people who have followed this and followed the book. This is your chance to get the card deck. So check those out. Also, real quick, support our sponsors, Zoom and HP. They've come alongside us here at the show to support both the show and to support the charity work that we do with Hacking Autism and Pioneer Education Africa. So if you're ever over at Zoom or HP, you're talking to people, spread the word and tell them where you heard about it here at Killer Innovations. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Pick up the show notes, go over to killerinnovations.com. You can listen to this show and see the show notes and all the notes and remind yourself all the points that were mentioned. Plus, you can find the entire archive going back 13 years. We are now in season 13 for Killer Innovations, so you're not going to want to miss that. Last week, we did include some bonus material that you can download. Periodically, if you go all the way back through a lot of the shows, you'll find a lot of free downloads, like an sample innovation funnel. It's ranking questions, how to rank ideas. There's a whole series of these free bonus downloads. You just got to go back through and you can listen to the shows, and the downloads will be available in the show notes. So we do that periodically. We want to get the material in your hand to help you be effective as an innovator, whether you're doing it on your own or you're part of an organization or you're a CEO at a multinational. So check that out. And with that, we're going to sign off for this week. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be part of the show today. Hope you loved Sachin and his sharing of his expertise and experience, but also his social impact work. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. Biz Talk Radio.